Hi everyone, how are you all doing? Is everybody okay? Awesome. So I'm so happy to be here for the second time, and I have a very hard task today, guys. I have to speak after the amazing Eric Johnson presentation, so thank you so much, Eric, for being here. And second, I have one of the last sessions of the day, so I need to keep you awake, right? So I hope you're awake. Now, last year I stood on this stage and I talked about how you can accelerate your developer productivity with generative AI. And this year I've decided to replace the word generative with agentic. So how creative am I? My name is Lefteris Karageorgiou. I'm a senior solutions architect with AWS, and I have been coding for the past 20 years, and I love talking about AI, productivity, serverless, same with Eric, and the best language in the world, which is Java. No, right? All right, before we start, first things first. I want us all to take a selfie, because I then go to my kids and I say, look, they're paying attention to daddy. So, 1, 2, 3, let's say AI. 1, 2, 3, AI. Awesome. All right, so I'm a huge fan of quotes. I love them because they really resonate with me. And last month, I posted this quote on LinkedIn, which says, there are two types of engineers, those who are using AI daily and those wondering why they're falling behind. Now, who is in the first category? Who is using AI daily at work to be more productive? Right? So like 30%, something like that, right? Who is using AI just for fun? You know, to create memes, videos for Instagram, and so on. Only. Don't be afraid, guys. Yeah? 2, 3 people, okay? And who is not using AI at all at work? Or in general? So everybody's using AI. Awesome. Now, I saw a study by Stack Overflow last year, and they said that out of 45,000 developers asked, only 36.3% are actually using AI at work to be more productive. I don't know where Eric found this 90% that he showed us, so it seems like stats are non-deterministic here as well. But only 36% they're using AI at work. Now, the other 31%, they said they're using AI just for fun, just for hobby. Right? Like this gentleman over here. And the rest, 30%, they're not using AI at all. Right? Now, what I really think developers and myself, what we want is we want to use AI throughout the whole development lifecycle. We don't really need AI just to create just a minor task or just like an optimization or whatever. We want the AI to help us from the requirements of our use case, from breaking down the tasks, from writing the user stories, to writing the code, write the unit test the code, and then optimize it, right? And finally deploy this application to the cloud, to wherever, right? That's what I really believe we want. And in this session, what I'm going to do is I will show you how I build a project in just a few hours to actually go through the requirements and finally deploy the application, with AI, of course. But now let's go back in history a bit and see why Agentic came out. Now, 2 years ago, in 2024, it was the year of LLMs, right? There are like so many models that came out, like more than 100 models that came out, like from OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, I mean so many. right? And they were very good at creating content, at creating images, but they were not that good at writing code. I mean, at least myself, I was not happy with the code they were writing, right? And then we introduced to the concept of vibe coding. And there were like people on LinkedIn writing like on their headlines, like I'm a vibe coder. But if we give, to vibe coding, if we gave it like a simple AI prompt, right, to create a full stack application with just a React frontend and a Node.js backend that stores user data in a database, right? Just a very simple vibe coded example. What it was doing, it was generating the front-end and the back-end code, but without the latest versions of React or Node.js. And why was that? It didn't have the latest information available, right? They were trained like months ago. It would not ask me to create like a database, what kind of database you want, like you want a relational or NoSQL. It wouldn't do that. So it wouldn't create that. And it wouldn't create an integration. So it would only do the front end and the back end part. And that was bad. So when I was doing like vibe coding, I felt like I was giving my pair programmer like turn-by-turn directions while coding. I had to tell, please create this function, please create this database, do that, right? You always had to do that. So you were getting lost, and what we really needed was like a North Star. And the real problems with LLMs were that they had shorter memory. Right? They were stateless, and they forgot things outside the context window. Then they just generated a single answer in one go, right? Also, LLMs could not browse the web or run code or query your database or company's web databases through APIs, so there was no really any real-world interaction. And finally, we lacked any planning. They were just reacting to the prompts we were given. They couldn't plan ahead. And in 2025, the promise was here. It was the year of Agentic AI. And Agentic AI refers to autonomous systems that were designed to independently achieve specific goals. And they could plan, they could reason, they could take action with minimal human intervention. So if we gave the same AI prompt to an Agentic AI coding assistant now, we would get the front-end and the back-end code with the latest versions of React and Node.js, right? It would ask us, what kind of database should I create? And we would answer, right? And finally, it would create also the integration. So Agentic AI felt like it was a great new revolution. And then we were introduced to something which was called MCP, Model Context Protocol, that Anthropic released, right? And when MCP came out, it was very hard for us developers to understand what is that, right? At least I couldn't understand what it was, but it was very easy to understand. Like MCP was to AI agents what an API is to software engineers, right? So you have the chatbots talking to your backend systems through LLMs, through MCPs, through interfaces, right? All right, now let's move on to our project, which is a super, super innovative project. You will be blown away. And that is a weather application. But not just a weather application, right? It is a serverless weather application that we will write down the requirements, We will break down the tasks. We will build the code. We will test it. We will optimize it and finally deploy it. Sounds awesome? Yes. And we will not do anything. We will not write any line of code. AI will do that for us. And our perfect design team, do we have designers here? No. Our perfect design team has created those two mock-ups, which is like the home page and the search page of our weather application. And we need to create our website, our front end, exactly the same with this design. Let's see how we're going to do that. Now, for that project, I will be using my favorite IDE, which has most probably the coolest logo ever. Does anybody recognize that logo? Not Eric, not you, man. Yes? What? Ghostbusters? What? Batman Ghost. Pac-Man Ghost. No, it's not Pac-Man, guys. It looks like Pac-Man, but it's not. Okay. So, this IDE is called Kiro. Kiro is an agentic IDE which was developed last year by AWS, and it is based upon Visual Studio Code. So, Kiro has two flavors, right? It has the Kiro IDE you see on the left, which is based upon Visual Studio Code. As you can see, it has the same look and feel with VS Code, right? And it also has a CLI, when you can write down in a terminal whatever you want as a coding assistant, right? So when should I use IDE or CLI? Now, if you're getting started, you can use the IDE, right? It has also a section with the chatbots there, so you can interact without any terminal. It's much easier. Now, if you are already a .NET developer, Java developer, PHP developer, no, that was a joke, you can use like your IDs with the Kiro CLI. And Kiro gives you access to multiple AI models. You get access to Opus, to Sonnet, to Haiku, DeepSeek, Qwen, and so on. And the cool thing about Kiro, it has an auto mode where you don't need to select any model. According to the AI prompt you are giving, it will auto-select the model that thinks it's the most efficient and the most cost-optimized. Now, last year at reInvent, which is the biggest AWS event which happens every year in Las Vegas, Kiro gained too much traction. I'm not showing this just to show off, right? So Kiro had its own booth where you could go in, you had to modernize a legacy code, most probably it was PHP, and then you get out of this house and you got some awards, and the awards we give at AWS are stickers, right? All right, so first stop, requirements. Let's go and build our project. Now, the first innovation that Kiro brought is what we call spec-driven development. So when you start Kiro, you see here, you have two options. You have the vibe option, which is what we know, vibe coding, right? And you have the spec option. And what the spec option does is you give it a prompt and it will first create 3 files. It will create the requirements, the design, and the tasks. And we will talk more about them later on. So let's go and give it a prompt. And the prompt is the weather application I want to build. So I'm going to say, Build a weather application with 2 pages. I want the home page and the search page. I want the front end to be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I don't care. You can do React, Angular, whatever you want. I want it to be hosted on S3 with CloudFront, and I want the backend to be serverless. I want to use API gateway and a Lambda function, and I want my Lambda function to connect with the weather API to get the information from. Finally, I want to create a Terraform template to define my infrastructure as code, right? Just a very simple code prompt. So I put it there, I hit enter, and what Kiro will do, as we said, it will create those 3 files. The first file is the requirements. So in the requirements file, I have all the user stories of my prompt, right? So it says, as a user, I want to see current weather information on the home page, and so on. You may have like 5, 10, or 15 user stories there. So you're going there and you review those user stories. And if you're okay with the user stories, you can proceed to the next task. If you are not, you can update the requirements file, which makes it very handy before you start building the code. Now, I'm happy with the requirements. I proceed to the next step. And the next step is I am building the design. Kiro is building the design, right? And in the design, what we have is we have the architecture, which looks nice. We have the request flow. We have components and interfaces. And again, if you're not happy with that, you can always edit it, update it, and then proceed to the next step, right? And if I'm happy with that, I proceed to the tasks file. And the tasks file has all the tasks that Kiro will run to build my code and my unit test as well. All right? Now, these are markdown files, which are in Kiro ID, okay? You will find them there. Now, what's the cool thing about that? The cool thing is that I now have a business analyst with me to write the requirements. I don't need a business analyst to go there and say, okay, write the requirements and then give them to me like in a week, right? I also have an architect with me, right? Which is cool. And finally, I have software engineers, QA engineers to write my code and my unit tests. Now, I have my requirements ready, and I want to build my application. I want to build my code. So I go to my tasks file, and there I have the option to run individual tasks or run all the tasks. The cool thing about the tasks file is that it also includes unit tests, but the unit tests are optional. So whenever you run all the tasks, you can ignore the unit tests, because you might want to first generate the code, see if it looks nice, if it's exactly what you want, before you start burning the tokens, and then if you're okay with that, start generating the unit tests. So this is the code base. Now I am running all the tasks, and I have generated here all the files. So I have a front-end folder where I have my index.html and my search.html. I have my Lambda folder, which is the AWS Lambda function, the backend layer, which calls the weather API to get the information from. And finally, I have my Terraform folder, which is the infrastructure as code tool I'm using, right? So I have everything in here. So now we've run the tasks. We've built the application. Let's go and open our index.html and see how it looks like. And when I open that, I get this. Is this close to my design? Not at all, right? This is pretty disappointing. But my perfect design team have created an amazing design, and I have to update my front end to look like the design, right? I have to make it look like that. How do I do that? And Kiro has a feature which is super, super cool that packages your tools, your workflows, and your best practices into a format that Kiro can activate. And this is called Kiro Powers. When you mention relevant keywords, Kiro will load this power into the context, and it will also load the tools automatically. I don't think you understood anything about what I've said, so let's see that in practice. Now, if we go back to our Kiro IDE, there is a section here which has all the powers. And these powers are actually things that AWS, partners, like whoever wants to write, they have written those powers. Okay? So there is a power which is called Design to Code with Figma, because my designers have built their designs with Figma. So what I want to do is I want to get this power. I want to install first the power. I want to try the power, and then in the chatbot, what I'm going to say is, I want you to take my front-end HTML and CSS files and make them look exactly the same with this design URL. And I'm going to paste the design URL I got from my design team, right? And as soon as I do that, Kiro will load the tools, the necessary tools it has from this power into the context, it will use them, and it will know what to do. It will go to the Figma URL, it will pick up the design exactly what it has there, and it will update my HTML and CSS files to look like that exact design. So in practice, after I do that, I will get this HTML page, which looks exactly the same with what I got from the design, right? So this is not a mock-up, it's a real one. That's why I have the browser here, just to show you. This really worked. And the same worked also with my search page, right? I got it. In less than an hour, I got my design ready from Figma. Now, the cool thing about Kiro Powers is that you can also build your own Kiro Power. And since I have my backend in serverless, since I'm using AWS Lambda and API gateways, etc., what I want is to also try to see if I can optimize my Lambda function, for example, right? And there is no serverless Kiro Power available in these official tools. But what I can do is I can go and search if anybody has written any Kiro Power, right? And then go and import it from GitHub. And I know a guy, a very good guy, who has written a Kiro Power for serverless, and I went there, I loaded it, I installed it, and then I started trying it. Now, let's see what happens if I asked something Kiro without a power and with a power, right? And understand a bit what the power has. Now, let's say I have this Lambda function that I wrote, right? And I ask Kiro, what is the best memory configuration for my Lambda function? If I ask that without a power, it would give me a generic advice, which is not bad, but it might not be the best. But if I used the Kiro Power, it would tell me exactly what I was looking for. It would tell me, you need to go there. Most probably you're not seeing that. It would tell me, you need to go and install an open source tool, which is called AWS Lambda Power Tuning, where you can run your Lambda function against a few memory configurations, and then I will tell you which memory configuration is the best for you. the most performant and the most cost efficient. So this advice, I didn't have this advice from Kiro without the power. But this advice was inside the power. That's why I got it. And we will see, we will dive deep into the powers right now, right? So as I said, the cool thing is that you can build your own powers. And what should we include in a power? What should we do with a power, right? Now, if we go and look at this serverless Kiro power here, we will see that we have a few files in here. The first is the power.md file. The second is mcp.json, and the third is a steering folder. Now, PowerMD is required and the others are optional. Let's see each one of those. Now, the PowerMD file has two parts. It has the front matter and instructions for the agent. Now, the front matter is this one, which says when should you load the power. What keywords should I see in the chatbot to actually load the power? So if I see keywords like serverless, Lambda, SAM, CDK, API gateway, I'm going to load this power, this file actually, into the context and give you advice based on this file, right? And the second one is the instructions that we see here, which are like instructions exactly what this power is doing, or you can have like onboarding steps or whatever, okay? And then you can also plug in your MCP servers into the powers. And in order to do that, you have to go to the PowerMD file. You should list all your MCP servers and the tools that you have available in your company to whatever, like query the database, the CRMs, whatever you have. And then you should go to the mcp.json file. You should create one to actually say where this MCP server lives. And the final folder that you have is the steering files, actually, which are optional. Now, we recommend that for simple powers, you include all the guidance directly in your PowerMD. But if you have complex tools and workflows and many, many other things, you can split your guidance into separate files. And this is where the steering files come in. So you can have steering files for observability, for optimization, for SAM, for troubleshooting, event-driven architectures, whatever you want. And you split them into separate steering files. You don't have everything into your power. So now you should ask me, right, how should I use this Kiro power? How should I use like the steering file that you mentioned, right? And here are some strategies that you can do inside your organization. You can have, for example, a steering file for the API standards that you have, like REST conventions, error responses, whatever. And you can have those and share them with all the teams. And you're going to use the same standards. The same with testing approaches, right? What kind of unit test patterns are you using? What SDKs? Whatever. Same with code conventions, right? Naming patterns, spaces versus tabs, whatever. You can have them there. And you can share them with your teams. Security guidelines, right? Anything there, or maybe the deployment process. So think like what you have in your organization as standards and create like a Kiro power and add everything there. So whenever you code the next time another service, microservice, whatever, you have this power loaded into your context. Now, step number 3 and final step of our project is to proceed with the deployment. So if I search for another Kiro power with Terraform, I will find it, for sure, right? It's there. So since I'm using Terraform, I can use this Kiro power. Maybe I don't know what kind of commands can I use to deploy my application, to do whatever, right? I can ask now the Terraform power to tell me what I need, right? Another pretty cool thing about Kiro is the agent hooks. Now, imagine you want to deploy your application to AWS. And you need to do like some kind of code change. You need to add like a new endpoint, you need to update a method or whatever. And you need to also update your documentation, README file, whatever, right? So how can I do that? I can use the agent hooks and say to Kiro, whenever I change, whenever I update this file, I want you to automatically trigger an agent to reflect those changes, right? And this is pretty amazing if you're writing unit tests. If you have, let's say you're adding like a new method, you can say to an agent hook, write an agent where every time I write a new method, it will write for me a unit test. All right, so let me show you what the final application looks like. So you're saying, yes, he has done that with Kiro. This is a demo, a pretty simple demo. So it kind of works. You go back, you see like the weather here, the home page, the search page, and it actually gets information from Weather API. And I built this very simple project in just a few hours. I deployed it to AWS, I tested it, everything, and everything was ready. Now, some key takeaways from this session that I want you to take. First is, as we saw, it's very, very easy to leverage AI to be more productive at work. So try to do it. Leverage AI every day at work. Also, try to think of ways to integrate AI across the whole development lifecycle. Not just the coding part, right? But the whole development lifecycle. Requirements, code, deployment, maybe maintenance as well, like everything. And finally, as we all know, AI is evolving too fast, so we should be choosing the right tool for the job. So next year, it might not be Kiro, it might be something else. Let's always try to use the right tool for the job. And before I close, I want to say that, because I get like so many questions, right? Asking me, will AI take my job? Since you're telling me that AI is perfect, you should be using it, but will AI take my job? There was a LinkedIn post that I saw the other day, and it really resonated with me, so I wanted to share it with you. And it said the following. Now, if you have a health problem and you talk to surgeons, they will tell you that you need surgery. Now, if you talk to nutritionists, they will tell you there's something wrong with your diet. And if you talk to chiropractors, they will tell you that your back is out of alignment. In the same way, top AI companies think that AI can solve all problems, and they want to convince you, us, everybody, that it will take all jobs. But I strongly believe this is not true. This is not true. And what we've seen in the last few months, we've seen that job postings for software engineers are rapidly increasing. So most probably companies understood that burning tokens without doing anything in production is not that productive. We still need software engineers to do the work. But since AI is here and it can do a lot of things, like a lot of things it can do for you, how can we differentiate ourselves from API? From AI? And I want you to take away 4 things. The first thing is, like Eric said, we need to adopt an architect's mindset. It's not I'm only like a software engineer, a backend engineer, or like a front-end engineer, or I don't know, like a designer or whatever. We need to know the system, the whole system, and not just a small part of it. And in order to do that, we need to take full ownership of our work. How many times have you said, this is not my responsibility? Many times, right? But we need to take full ownership. We need to take this and put it into production by going and talking to other teams, other stakeholders, etc. Of course, things are evolving, and we need to stay eager and open to learning. If a new model comes in, we need to test it and see if it works good. If a new tool comes in, we need to do that as well. And finally, we need to be a very good communicator. Like, clarity and communication at work is what really matters. How many times have you seen George, John, Nikos, Maria, or whoever getting the promotion before you guys, and you are always like, no, I was better than him, right? I was better technically than him. Yeah, but he was a better communicator than you. He was more visible at work. He knew how to communicate the value and the impact he was doing. So that is exactly what we should be doing. Thank you so much for attending the session. If you want to connect with me, this is my LinkedIn profile. I'm happy to answer any questions there. Thank you.